Welcome everybody to office hours. As you know, we do this on a monthly basis through a grant from the Bureau of Primary Health Care, and we appreciate your being here. The slides will be posted on Noddlepod probably in a week or less, and so I will make sure that those are brought to your attention when they're available. Again, because we're supported by federal funds, we won't be discussing advocacy today, but we are having some discussions about doing something separate, maybe having another office hours not supported by federal funds, where we can do that. So we'll keep you posted. So today we're going to run through some quick things as far as the Winter Coalition Conference, some of the recent developments going on with 340B in the state and the national area. And then I've got a short presentation on patient assistance programs. So Sue, if you want to take over on this side, I would appreciate it.
Sure, and I'll be very, very brief. Before I talk about the coalition, I do just want to comment that we've developed some great resources. We've come a long way in the last few years. I'd say the last 5 years. And some of you that are on the office hours today are probably members of the 340B, the NAC 340B work group. And I want to talk just a minute about the fact that with all the resources that we've developed, office hours, Noddlepod is certainly a huge help to all of us. It may be time for us to rethink the composition of the group. We've grown to about 156 members. And so I did have a meeting with the NAC Federal and State Affairs team this week, and we're looking towards what's the best infrastructure to continue this level of membership engagement on 340B. So to the work group members, I would say, I don't anticipate that we're going to be meeting over the P&I. We may, but I'm not sure about that, but look forward to some updates about that member engagement model in terms of the work group going forward. In terms of the coalition, I'm thrilled to say that we've got more people registered for the Winter Coalition than we had for the Summer Coalition. I think maybe the people that were on the Summer Coalition meetings really saw how effectively the transition to virtual format worked. I think we have a good lineup of sessions for this upcoming Winter Coalition, and you have them in front of you. There's still plenty of time to sign on. The breakout session, which is next Wednesday, is going to be a live session. So it will be live. The others are pre-recorded, but the others also each have a 10-minute live Q&A as well. So look forward to seeing some of you at those sessions. The last thing I want to say is the call for speakers is already out for the summer meeting. At this point, I have not been informed as to whether or not it's going to be virtual or in person. I'm guessing we're leaning virtual, but not sure yet. But if you have topics of interest, I'm hoping that we'll have the same format, our breakout session and 3-hour-long expert sessions. So if there are topics that you're interested in, please shoot them my way. I'll put my email address in the chat box. Or if you're interested in being a speaker and have a topic you would like to speak on, please let me know that as well. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you very much, Sue. I appreciate the update. Our next, we'll be looking at operational updates and other developments. And it's going to begin with here, the federal affairs. Matt, are you able to unmute yourself, or do I need to unmute you? I unmuted you.
Yeah, I think it works on mine. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
Okay, well, we can go ahead and jump right into it. Really, I'm going to be speaking more so to, I would call them regulatory updates as opposed to federal, because federal is usually dealing with sort of Hill stuff. So if you could go to,
let's see. Are these not your slides, or these are? Okay.
Those ones look like.
Tim, those are my, yeah.
Okay, Jeremy, do you want to jump in then?
Sure.
Do you mind? Thank you.
Yeah, go for it.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, everybody. I was having a hell of a time getting on the WebEx. I'm really sorry about that. So am I going or Matt?
Why don't you go? That's the order the slides were in. I had Matt's name, so I thought it might have been his slides, but I'm
That's
sorry.
okay. Can you go to the next? I think it's the next slide. Perfect.
How's that?
All right. Perfect. Good afternoon, everybody. Jeremy Crandall with the State Affairs team here at NAC. I apologize. I need to get my brain right. I was running to get on this WebEx, so forgive me if I'm a little fuzzy here for the first 10 seconds. But the main piece and I know that there are some folks that are on this that are also on our state policy issues call that our State Affairs team runs. And we spoke about a lot of this on Monday, but I know that there's not complete crossover, so we wanted to bring it up with all of you folks as well. And thank you to Tim and Sue and Brandon for allowing me to be on. And my colleague Visharia Tutson is also on. We sort of tag team on 340B, so we can both answer any questions. So the big thing that I wanted to convey to all of you, and Visharia and I both, before we came to NAC, worked in state politics and state policy making. And really in 2021, and this has been the case for at least, I would say, 3 or 4 years now, there's going to be a lot of prescription drug activity at the state level. And it offers both opportunities and challenges and things to be aware of on the 340B landscape. But what we wanted to do was tell you what is going to be on the RX landscape so that you can be on the lookout for it with you and your colleagues as these bills are coming up. So we're going to be talking about PBM reforms. We're going to be talking about transparency, cost review commissions, price gouging, coupons, and cost sharing. The big thing that I want to convey to you is sort of the national, perspective here and the enormity of how many folks are working on this. This sort of alphabet soup of groups that you could see here: NAIC, NASHP, NCSL, NCOIL, the governors, ALEC, which is a very powerful organization on the conservative side of state legislators. They are all working in some shape or form on prescription drug issues. NASHP has its own department or sort of work stream on RX issues. NAIC just did a PBM, pharmacy benefit managers model. Point being, all of these folks are working on it. And so it's obviously going to be a big deal coming up. Tim, if you can go to the next slide, please. Or Brandon, excuse me.
Actually, I'm running it for Brandon. So.
All good. There. Oh, no.
All right. Let's get where you need to be. It is real sensitive.
Perfect. All right. So PBMs, really, I could spend an hour with you all talking about pharmacy benefit managers and PBMs writ large. Here's the main takeaway that I want to convey on this front. As you can see by this map right here, I can guarantee in all 50 states there has been conversations about pharmacy benefit manager reform, either in a previous session or it's going on right now in a current session. And there's a couple of reasons why that is. Number one, pharmacy benefit managers are definitely the hot button issue when it comes to lowering drug prices, in addition to obviously manufacturers. But what we are seeing right now is there's a number of national models from that alphabet soup list of groups, that there number of national PBM reform models that they are pushing. I mentioned NAIC, there's an NCOIL one, there's been a number of states. West Virginia is one of the immediate ones that comes to mind. Arkansas is another, Montana is another, that have passed PBM reform bills in the last several years. And where the opportunity lies is that there's potentially an ability to get language in there that's going to provide further protections for the 340B program. One of the items, and I very much want to give a hat tip to Colleen Myman, who I know you are all familiar with. I know she's been doing a ton of work on this, and we definitely communicate about it. But on the anti-discrimination front and preventing pickpocketing on 340B. And it's not just that, though. I will tell you there are a lot of provisions that get stuffed in to these PBM bills where there's an ability to both create more protections for 340B, and there are also vulnerabilities as well. So why don't we go to the next slide, Tim? Or Brandon? Perfect. So I'm going to whip through these next few slides. PBMs are definitely the big one, but there are a number of other ancillary RX issues that we're seeing come up. Transparency is another really, really big one right now. I would say it is sort of the common ground in the prescription drug space right now, where all parties can sort of agree, okay, let's do something on this, where manufacturers, PBMs, health insurers are required to submit information, usually to your insurance commissioner or some other entity within the state, about the most high cost drugs, whether prices are going up, and issues related to that. Again, there's what we're saying to folks on the ground is just be mindful of all the various levers that are in this bill and things that could create 340B vulnerabilities. Let's go to the next slide, please. All right, so this is one that we've seen come up just in the last couple of weeks. So this is absolutely, and really the common theme is there's a national model on all of these issues that I'm mentioning to you, but this is definitely a big one. Prescription Drug Affordability Board, it's a push that I know NASHP is talking about, where states are pursuing legislation and they are passing it to essentially create what is a cost review commission for high cost drugs. This is something that Oregon has just been looking at in the last couple of weeks. It creates an upper payment limit for specific high cost drugs. And there is a potential that could have a downstream effect on 340B savings that our covered entities and health centers are obviously taking advantage of and utilizing. Tim and I assessed the Oregon bill. We think that the potential is probably relatively small in this, but what we really want to emphasize with bills like this and otherwise is making sure that FQHCs and the state associations have a role at the table. There's a lot of structure that is going into these. There's boards that are getting created, advisory commissions. Would really encourage you if you can get a seat at that table as these bills are working their way through to do that. Let's do the next slide. Just a couple more for folks. Coupons and cost sharing. The big hot button piece here is obviously the cost of insulin. I put in these examples from Florida, New Jersey, and Texas, just as examples, but I will tell you, you can see the list of states here. Any state that is working on this, usually it's focused on the cost of insulin. But again, there's obviously a lot going on at the federal level on this front as well, but I wanted to make you aware of this as well. And what this really is getting at is copay accumulators. That is really a fight between the PBMs, the manufacturers, and the health plans, but it's something to be aware of as well. Next slide, please, Tim. And then finally, I alluded to it a little bit at the top that there is a potential in some of these PBM bills to get anti-discrimination language as it relates to 340B. Tim, if I'm remembering right, I think it was, we were talking about West Virginia, where there was some language in there that wasn't specific to 340B covered entities. But I wanted you all to see the landscape because separate from the PBM bills where it's getting attached, essentially riders or amendments to these other vehicles, this is what we're seeing in terms of legislation that's been legislation that has been enacted recently, and there's a number of states that are now pursuing it in 2021. The main takeaway that I want to convey here before I finish up is Vasheri and I on the state affairs team have been partnering with a number of states to provide letters of support and other technical assistance for all of you as you're dealing with these bills in your legislature. I just really want to convey we are here to help. If having a letter of support, that you can submit for written testimony for these bills from the National Association is helpful. Don't hesitate to ask for that. Also understand if it's not, sometimes having a national group come in is not all that useful, but just want to really emphasize we're tracking these bills, we're aware of them, and we're here to help. So please don't hesitate to reach out. I think that's my last slide, guys. Yeah. So, oh no, actually pause one sec. Yeah, just to wrap up, as I already mentioned, we are tracking this. We do really want to hear from you. That is really a role that we want to continue to grow from the National Association, because if you're seeing it in one state, especially on the PBM front and transparency, if you're seeing it in one state, could guarantee it's going to be popping up in 4 or 5 others. And so if we can create sort of a synergy of messaging, and if we can get the same sort of protection measures in multiple states, it's only going to help us us on down the line. The last piece I really want to emphasize, because I know it's not a natural outreach that FQHCs have had recently. There are a lot of players involved with these bills. One of the specific entities are your state insurance commissioners. These PBM reform bills are putting a lot of these reform efforts, a lot of the reform oversight in the hands of your insurance commissioner. Now, I don't expect that there's a vulnerability per se there, but if you're putting more in the hands of the insurance commissioner and they're going to be looking at rising drug prices, it's good to have a relationship there. It's good to be checking in and reminding them of the value of the 340B program. Attorneys General, another big one, because attorneys general are really getting involved with drug pricing as well. So I think that is now my last slide, Tim.
All righty.
All right. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you so much. Folks, these are just some of the upcoming trainings that are going on through NAC and also here through the 340B Health Winter Coalition Conference over the next couple of weeks. NAC's P&I Policy and Issues Forum will be done virtually in March. So now I have come to Matt's slides. And Matt, I apologize ahead of time that they're not in color, but that's how they transferred.
That's okay. No harm done. I will try to just kind of cut to the chase here and just update you all as to some regulatory developments that are going on that impact 340B. You may know that on January the 22nd of this year, there was a 60-day notice of delay that was imposed with the 340B insulin and EpiPen rule. You'll recall that was the rule that the Trump administration tried to roll out in July. Overall, the delay on that rule is a positive impact because it would have gone into effect on January the 23rd. And so that delay is at least allowing our allies within the government some time to analyze and perhaps further press the case and decide whether to ultimately rescind that rule or, continue that notice of delay. So we're still actively monitoring that. Definitely, as the situation evolves, we'll make sure to continue to keep you all updated. Certainly, as with any other regulatory issues, if you got a question about this, feel free to reach out to myself or to reach out to Tim or anyone else on our team about that. Next slide, please. Well, the other issue that I wanted to bring to your attention is just the latest in terms of the 340B ADR rule. In late December, HRSA established a final regulation that established that ADR process, and in early January, we had Felsman Tucker file an actual ADR claim on NAC's behalf, which I think if you go to the next slide, there's some more about that, and we start to get into that area. So as I was saying, on January 13th, NAC opened this claim that went into the ADR process. Shortly thereafter, Felsman Tucker requested a preliminary injunction, and that was just to have the ADR board order drug makers to resume shipping 340B drugs to contract pharmacies until there's been some kind of conclusion as to this ADR resolution process. It's unclear exactly how long it's going to be until all of that shakes out. I know that there's been some other litigation where some of the manufacturers have attempted to sue, disputing the entire ADR process. So it's going to take a little bit until that component is sorted out, I would say. Next slide, please. Last thing I wanted to say, just before I kind of go into this next subject, talking about the advisory opinion. When it comes to the ADR rule, I think the key thing to think about, or the key thing to note, is that there's an emphasis that was placed in the text of the rule regarding good faith in disputes. And so, we don't quite know exactly what that means, because some of this it's new territory. We have to see how it sort of plays out as the ADR panels are convened. But what that means is, I think it's important for health centers as covered entities just to, think about how exactly are they approaching if they're confronted by a manufacturer about alleged violations, so to speak. Second thing to note is that the text of the rule talks about how decisions are meant to be precedential. And so what that means is that as more claims come out and more decisions are rendered, the facts and reasonings that arrive at those conclusions will help to influence the newer claims that come after the fact of those ones. So, those are just kind of a couple of small points to keep in mind as we're all trying to sort of sort out what this rule is going to mean and how we can use it to our advantage. But, I just kind of wanted to bring those things to your attention, like as we're going through this stuff. So the next thing there is talking about the HRSA advisory opinion on contract pharmacies. And so I believe it was early January, the Office of General Counsel for HHS released an advisory opinion. And that advisory opinion concluded that drug manufacturers need to ship 340B price drugs to contract pharmacies. I mean, I think kind of the crux of the point was that if, a covered entity purchases these drugs, it's, their material, their property, it's within their discretion to choose where those things are shipped or sent to. Nonetheless, though, even though this opinion came out and this opinion is helpful, some of these manufacturers, including Eli Lilly, AstraZeneca, and Sanofi, have sued HHS over the opinion. And so it'll take a while probably for that lawsuit to play out and to see how exactly that would go. But the fact that, we're aware that the new administration is, I guess, of a favorable opinion about the 340B program and how contract pharmacies use it. And the fact that this advisory opinion came out during the last administration, it's probably unlikely that the court would rule against it, because typically speaking, courts defer to federal agencies in terms of their decision making, unless they can actually show that there was some kind of violation of law and how they arrived at that decision. Next slide, please. Oh, I'm sorry about that. Okay, so that slide is actually a bit of a moot point, but if you do have access to Feldsman Tucker's, I guess, online resources, they did do a 340B in the Biden administration webinar. It occurred about an hour ago. Unfortunately, I couldn't watch it live because I was double booked with meetings. But, these things are useful in terms of just kind of helping to strategize and figure out, what's the course here going forward? What are our best options? What are our best moves? I'll definitely be tuning into it later when I get a minute. And, I just wanted to make sure that I let you all know so that we could, put the word out and give you the opportunity as well. Next slide, please. And this is my last point, just a general reminder. Right now, we are still within the 340B program HRSA recertification period. That goes from February the 1st until March the 1st. So if you have not done it already, please make sure that your 340B IDs are all up to date. Make sure that your acting officer information is up to date. Make sure that your PC information is up to date. If you got any questions about that, make sure to just maybe reach out to us if you have a question. If you have access to Apexis, please make sure to reach out to them. As always, we're still here to help, and just let us know if you have any questions. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Matt. I appreciate your help with this. And give me just 1 second to bring up the next set of slides, please. All right. Hopefully you can see the slides now that are green. Matt, can you see the green slides?
I can see.
Give me a thumbs up. Great. Perfect. Okay, folks. We're doing this program on patient assistance programs. Over the last 2 years that I've been working with NAC, this question comes up quite a bit. How do we set something up to help these patients? Oftentimes it's for patients that maybe are over 200% of the federal poverty level that need assistance, and we can't use EPAP or sliding fee. But this is just something that's come up periodically, and we utilized a PAP a lot at my health center. Not as much lately with the expansion of Medicaid. We have fewer uninsured patients, but we still utilize it some in our clinic. I know that there are many health centers around the country that could desperately use assistance in making sure patients are getting access to medications. So let's go forward. First off, the slide here, once I send these slides out, if you'd bring them up, this is the link to our survey. We need you all to do this survey to help us to maintain our funding for office hours. So here's the link. If you can't get it now or do a screenshot or something, it will be available on the slides later on. So to begin with, we think of patient assistant programs out there. They're really to help provide structure to support us in getting medications to folks who really need them but can't afford them, as well as looking at copay assistance. So I'm going to kind of wrap both of those together. Those are both areas that we've tried to help patients with in the past, and I think we can provide some insights and some tools to help you do that through this. So patient assistant programs are really based on financial need, their patient's insurance coverage, and medical necessity. The interesting thing, copay assistance cards are based on insurance coverage and medical necessity. Are they on the drug? But it's not based on financial need. So in trying to start a program for a patient assistance program, there's a lot of challenges to it, and even coming up and convincing your C-suite of the need for one, and the idea that I need to dedicate 0.5 FTEs or something to this program, it can really be challenging. So not only getting the monies to go ahead and start the program, but knowing that you're going to need to work very closely with your medical department in order to make this happen. So in the long run, though, we can justify this. We'll see some cost savings because if we're able to get free meds for patients who otherwise wouldn't have these meds, we're going to keep our patients healthier. We're going to improve adherence. And in doing this, we're going to improve the outcomes for our patients. Now, when we do that, we do get money through HEDIS scores and through, that improvement. And I know that in some areas, the health centers have moved to a pay for performance versus pay for production. So as we get patients healthier, there will be a return on that on the medical side. We may not see that on pharmacy side, but we certainly will see that in overall care. With copay assistance cards, though, any of our commercially insured patients, we would see a direct benefit. Let's say they're under 200% FPL, their copay is $100. Most of us are going to move those patients over to our EPAP or sliding fee programs in order to provide those meds. If we get a copay assistance card, we can charge our full usual and customary for those drugs, and that copay assistance card will pay the copay down to often $5 a month. We get to keep all of that as 340B savings that way, instead of moving it to EPAP or sliding fee, where we get very, very little savings. So let's talk about who do we look for to be our PAP coordinator. So if you have an in-house pharmacy, I can tell you likely it's best to have someone within the pharmacy department doing this. They're going to have the best knowledge of drugs and how we go about billing them. They would as they work through this, they would learn to understand more about how foundations work, how some of the various insurers work with the foundations and with the drug companies. This person, though, that we're thinking about has three attributes I think are really, really important. One is they need to be able to work independently. At my health center, our lead tech did our PAP work. She would come in the morning, she'd help get us rolling and get billing started, assign duties to the other techs. Then she'd buzz away to her PAP computer and start her day. And throughout the day, whenever she had a break, she jumped on her patient assistance program, got caught up, entered in new applications, whatever it was. So they've got to be someone that can multitask and knows just because there's a lull in pharmacy right now doesn't mean I don't have other tasks to do. And the other two aspects, I think, is compassion and dedication. You're dealing with some folks who aren't happy. They're not getting the meds they need. They've got to jump through some hoops to get them. We know that they're getting very expensive meds very inexpensively, or free actually. But the patients don't quite comprehend that sometimes. And we have to deal with their unhappiness with their situation. So compassion and dedication is going to be very important in determining someone to fill that PAP coordinator position. If you don't have an in-house pharmacy, you're going to look for someone like a medical assistant. You need someone with some medical knowledge about the drugs, and the rest of it they can learn kind of on the job. But it'd be wonderful to have a little more experience there. Once you've got kind of the idea who you want to run the program, working with them, you want to outline your policies and procedures. One of the keys within that would be, what services are you going to provide? I've talked with a couple of health centers around the country that have really good patient assistance programs and kind of pick their brains. One that I spoke to down in Mississippi, they only do about 20 drugs. That's all that they are able to that they're willing to do just to streamline their process. I believe they have 40 or 50% uninsured patients there, so they do a lot of patient assistance. So they have streamlined it. So you'll outline that in your policy and procedure. You also need to, set up, this is the processes that we're going to go through. So, how will we identify what patients are eligible? We'll know if the patient says when they come to the window, oh, I don't have any insurance, I can't afford that drug. Or perhaps the provider will call the pharmacy or contact that MA and say, look, I need you to help Mrs. Brown. She doesn't have insurance, or her copay is too high. What can we do for them? The other processes would be, how will we gather the required information, and how will we track? And tracking is so key, from submission of the application all the way through reordering it. Our next slide actually is going to talk here about tracking and what we need to do there. A lot of folks utilize an Excel spreadsheet to do their tracking of their patient assistance program. This is a good way of doing it. It's very inexpensive. I think every pharmacy has Word or Office on their computer somewhere that you could set up an Excel tracking sheet. So the cost is minimal, but there's a lot of work in actually setting up this Excel spreadsheet and getting it to work for you, to do the things that you need it to do. That's where some of the web-based PAP software really starts to shine. The drawback there is it can be a little costly. When I say that, I've talked to a couple of companies. I've seen it range anywhere from $1,000 a year for unlimited submissions to close to $400 a month. So that's quite a range there. Some folks say, well, we don't have any money, we can't afford to do that. In many ways, I feel, can you afford not to? Because of what some of these software will provide for you, the tracking is something that they'll do automatically. You don't have to do scanning through an Excel spreadsheet to find when someone's due for a refill. I also feel it's a wonderful use of our 340B savings. I think it really meets the intent of the program because we're improving patient care by using 340B to pay for this software. And this would look really good on your one-pagers. When you talk about how you utilize your 340B savings, saying that we use this savings to fund a patient assistant program coordinator and to purchase the software needed to manage these programs. And we've helped X number of patients, and we have received $1.3 million in free medications for patients. That's going to look really, really good as a way of utilizing 340B. So when you're looking at setting up your Excel tracking sheet, these are things that you're going to need to include on it. The patient name, demographic, address, phone numbers, things like that. You may need diagnosis codes. You definitely need to know what medications they're on and what medications you're seeking to get assistance with. You'll work through what the manufacturers are, and then the dates. And these are the things that are really important to track, and you're going to have to set up columns on your Excel spreadsheets. When did the patient complete the form? When did the doctor sign it? When was it sent to the manufacturer? When did you get it back? And when did the patient pick it up? And when is it time to reorder? It's great to have something that pops up and says, you know, Tim Millett needs that 60 days, send in refill for Xarelto, something like that. So make sure you have something that will tell you when you're getting close to that reorder time. When you receive these meds in, it's very important that you're documenting that you received them, but what was the lot number, what was the expiration date, and what was the NDC that you received. These are key in case there's ever a recall that happens periodically, not all that often, but you need to know if by chance you dispense the medication through your PAP program, that was a part of a recall. So make sure that you're documenting that. Patient information forms. I'm going to be at before midnight tonight. I'll be getting onto Nattlepod and adding a whole slew of forms that some of our health centers have volunteered to share with us. Some of those are like a screening or an application form where you present that to the patient and they can handwrite all of the information, their name, address, medications, allergies, things like that. There's also going to be an authorization form. I really like the authorization form that my friends in Virginia provided. It's nice. It gives, first authorization is it's giving you permission as the health center to apply for these medications for the patient. But the other thing that I really liked is they have a separate one that gives you permission to sign the paperwork on their behalf. That had often been an issue for us, is getting the patient in. Once everything was taken care of and we were ready to roll, we needed them to sign off on it. Now with a form like this, you don't have to. And when you submit the application, you just attach that form as well so that the manufacturer understands that you have been given this permission by the patient. I'll also have some examples of patient letters. Some of those would be for no proof of income. Any of these manufacturer programs are going to ask, how much does the patient make? And the interesting thing is they don't cut off at 200%. Most of them go up to 300, 400, even 500% federal poverty level, but they need some proof of income. And if you don't have proof of income, I'll have these letters posted that you can wordsmith or use how you would like and submit that to the drug manufacturer. So how does a day look for a PAP coordinator? As I mentioned, Sue at my health center, once she finished her projects, she'd jump on the computer, she'd look at her emails, she'd listen to her voicemail, both for information from patients, from providers, or even from the drug companies. So that's the first thing. You're checking all of your communication sources for new news. Once your program's up and running, your providers will know that if there's a problem with the patient getting medication, that they'll want to reach out to you. So that's why you'll be checking your emails and voicemails. Mrs. Smith goes in and sees her provider, and the provider says, how is this medication working? And she goes, I'm sorry, I couldn't afford it. You know, it was way beyond my financial ability. Well, they're going to get a hold of you. If they have insurance, they could potentially get a copay assistance card, or you work through PAP for them. But be prepared, because folks within your health center will learn that you are the source for helping these patients in need. Then you'll be looking at your spreadsheet or your program, your software program, checking where applications are in the process. Is it time to do refills, things like that? And you'll also use your time working on current patient applications. So what I've done here, I've listed some software programs that, first of all, these first few here are ones that folks responded to me on NaDoPod when I asked, is anyone using a PAP program? I can tell you some of the folks aren't real enamored with the program they're using. Others really like their programs. So I'm going to throw all of you folks under the bus. And if you have questions about one of these programs in specific, reach out to the person named. So reach out to Derek or Sue Ann or Andrew, Anna, David, or Virginia. If you go into NaDoPod and you see that PAP thread that we were working on, if you click on the person's name, you can get their email address. And I'm sure they can tell you briefly if they like it, what they don't like. But everyone, for the most part, has found value in the PAP program. As I said before, they can be pricey, especially if you've done it all on a spreadsheet in the past, and now you're going to pay for this. I can tell you we paid for our service at the time, and it was money so well spent. We really loved having the program. I want to mention one of these and point it out just because I had a chance to talk with these folks and see a demo of their program, and that's the Virginia Healthcare Foundation. One of the things I liked about these folks, they're a foundation, they're a nonprofit. They work in Virginia on a variety of health projects. One of them is the Pharmacy Connection, PPC. And they have patient assistance programs, and their software was really good at entering the data, tracking the data, submitting it to the manufacturer, staying current with the current applications. I was really impressed with it. And, you know, if any of you would see value, perhaps at a later date, we could maybe set up some sort of a webinar or work with them and they could do a demo for you. But all of these services, folks that use them, for the most part, are happy with what they're getting. But as I said, I thought the cost for the Virginia Healthcare Foundation program was actually pretty reasonable for what you'd be getting. So next slide here. These are a couple of other PAP sites. I wasn't able to get a lot of information, but everything that you see, if it's in green, in the light green, it should link you to their website. So I think you have to do Control-click, and it should take you to the website. So when you pull up my slides, you should be able to go into this slide and Control-click and go directly to their websites. So there's some other sites I wanted to bring up. And these also, some of them have PAPs in them, but they'll also link you with foundations and other types of financial assistance. And I was kind of surprised that these were out there. Needy Meds does a really good job of that. I like their webpage. I spent some time jumping around, and you put a drug in and it takes you to what assistance is available. The medicine assistance tool is actually put out by pharma. Believe it or not, we always are fighting with pharma, but this tends to be a really good tool. It can help direct you to resources available directly through some of the drug companies. The HealthWell Foundation was another one that I really liked, and that was because, again, it's a foundation, but they are in there, and I was looking at different areas that they want to help folks. They can help with co-pays, with premiums, with deductibles, and it's not for every drug or every patient, but I think it's well worth taking the time to get in there and see what's available for folks. And patient assistance services, I'm sorry, I don't remember off the top of my head what they had, but each of these, as I said, Control-click, you can get directly into them. Sometimes patients come into the pharmacy and say, hey, I needed help with my Xarelto. I got online, but they wanted to charge me $50 to do the paperwork. There's a lot of sites out there that will certainly help patients get free meds, but they're going to charge them for it. So make sure that your patients are aware that, you know, your health center has someone that's going to help them through this, that they don't have to pay that $50 fee. And apparently it's every time they re-up, every time they renew, they may have to pay this. So just understand that some of the programs that patients may Google and find aren't really going to be a free program, that there will be a fee involved. So getting ready to close up here, I talked about copay assistance cards, and I wanted to make sure that we differentiated between discount cards, copay assistance cards. We've talked about discount cards before, like GoodRx and some of these others. They sound wonderful. We've got doctors' offices that put them out on their counters, that hand them to people, that include them in their ERXs to use this GoodRx login. They're wonderful, except we as pharmacies lose money. Even on 340B, we lose money filling them. So I'm not a huge fan of discount cards, but the copay assistance cards I really like. And I don't see them in any way negatively impacting our financials within the pharmacy. In fact, we can see improved savings, as I mentioned earlier, where a patient couldn't use this brand name drug, instead of having to find a somewhat similar generic or something else, and use a copay assistance card and get it very inexpensively. As far as I know, I have not seen any issues using 340B with any of these copay assistance cards. I've looked. Not to say that there's not one out there that limits it. The biggest thing that I know that will limit you is if you have government assistance. If you're on Medicaid, if you're on Medicare. If you're not one of the low-income subsidy Medicares where you're getting your scripts for $1 or $3 or $4.20 or something like that, but you have copays that are really high, the copay assistance cards, unfortunately, aren't always going to work on Medicare Part D. If you get into needy meds, they will help you work through. This is an example of what I found on Xarelto. And the bottom one here says eligible commercial or government insured patients. It can get it down to $85 a month. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get far enough into it to see what sort of government insured patients this would relate to. It required me actually doing an application, and I couldn't do that. But if you do a little digging, you can find some very, very interesting things. So I just want to give one example of something that worked in my family. My father was very ill with a degenerative disease that caused him to have very low blood pressure. His blood pressure, if he stood, could be 60/40. And he would pass out. He had a lot of issues. There was a medication. It cost him, with insurance, over $1,500 a month. And while he wasn't in a low-income subsidy, they certainly don't have a whole lot of money. They were able to work through the drug company, through a foundation then, to get his meds covered. And so we were thrilled that that was going to happen, and that the medication, without them having to spend all of their Social Security and some of their savings just for a single med. So just realize that there is help out there for patients. It does take a little digging, but that's why it's important that we actually have that 340 or that PAP coordinator who kind of keeps all of this stuff in their head. They definitely want to be writing it down, but just ideas that we do have ways to help patients. So a good PAP coordinator can lend so much value to your pharmacy and to your patients. So as we just said, you know, that your PAPs can be really valuable. Patients will get meds they need. They'll get improved adherence. You can move patients from the EPAP or sliding fee programs to a PAP program where it may not cost them anything. I can tell you, though, at my health center, we did have an administration fee of $5 per application. And that just defrayed a little bit of our cost. $5 was our minimum fee on EPAP. So if they could get, 3 months of their drug plus a year's worth of refills for $5, it was a heck of a deal for them. So we just use that to offset a little bit of our fees. You don't have to, but it is something that you can do. Lastly, again, using your 340B savings to help patients work through the PAP process is a great way of documenting the value of 340B to your patients in your health center. So I told you I was going to post documents. I want to shout out to Virginia and David at Central Virginia Health Center and Anna and Leslie at Christ Health Center for talking with me, spending time, explaining their programs, and being willing to share their forms that I'll be posting later. So many, many thanks to all of you. This is just, I thought I'd put it up. This is the consent and release form and the signature authorization form. I just thought this was so cool and something I wish I had thought of 12, 15 years ago. But I threw this up just as an example of one of the forms that I'll have posted soon. So that's everything that I have for you today. We still have a little bit of time left. I don't know if any of the other presenters can unmute if there were questions that I need to cover. I see one here on PAP resources for feeding tube supplies. Hannah, I am not aware. I would look at a couple of those places, that one foundation, because what they did was so broad. They may have something that could help you. But off the top of my head, I don't. Let's see. I will post the evaluation survey in NaDoPod. Brandon, did you see anything else?
Hey, I'm looking through the chat. I think there was a couple in the chat there. Just trying to cycle through here. I think Emma, if we only have contract pharmacies, will this discuss how to organize a PAP? You may have already gone over that.
Well, again, just to say real quickly, if you only use contract pharmacies, perhaps you as the 340B coordinator, or you'd get one of your MAs to be that PAP coordinator for your health center. Just because you don't have an in-house pharmacy doesn't mean that your patients don't have significant needs in this arena. So you need to find that person in-house. If you need to talk to me further about it, just reach out to me. My emails, I'm available through NaDoPod. Most all of you should know how to reach me. I'd be happy to set up time to talk with you more about doing it for a non-in-house pharmacy.
Hey, Tim, I don't know if you can see the questions in the Q&A. So you can probably scan through those. I know early on, Rita put a question in there. If we signed on as a participant in the NAC Feltham-Tucker claim, how will we know the outcome if it pertains to us, the covered entity?
That's part of probably the ADR or other. My thoughts are if you are a claimant that they are going to move forward and use you specifically, they'll be reaching out to you to get more information. Right now, they're just holding all of those in reserve as this process moves on. And so you could hear something from them anytime between now and probably the 20th of March. I think, as Matt mentioned, things have been put on hold for roughly 60 days on the ADR process. So Feltham-Tucker may still be working to align the folks that they'll be using in their ADR claim right now. But they would reach back out to you if indeed you're going to be used.
Great. I think there are some questions here about the assistance card, the copay assistance card. Is this for in-house pharmacies or contract pharmacies?
It can be used at any pharmacy. That's the beauty of it. You know, when a manufacturer puts out these cards, they don't think of 340B or anything else because it's really, they're thinking of retail pharmacies. We're just able to take advantage of it if we have an in-house pharmacy with no penalties. But yeah, they most definitely are available. In the days, you know, gosh, years ago, I was a pharmaceutical rep, and we would have these cards we'd leave at doctor's offices. So you can either get these copay assistance cards from the pharmaceutical reps if you still have relationships with them, or they can be downloaded online. I actually downloaded one online for my father for Eliquis that he needed. And it was wonderful because his copay was over $300 and we got it for $5 for him.
I'm reading through our chat box just to make sure I can capture things that are pertinent here. I think there's a Carrie mentioned to us about what about creating our own discount card like the Gold Club, something similar to the Gold Club.
Yeah, those are things that really, I can tell you, years ago, people really got into that. Many folks who in the past, and this is independent pharmacies, not 340B, just retail pharmacies, they're getting out of it because it just skirts such a gray area that they don't want to take any risk with their PBMs and be in violation of a usual and customary charge that they're sending to the PBM, but their Gold Club that you pay 50 cents or $1 or $5 to be a member of gives it to you for next to nothing. Everybody's running kind of scared of the PBMs and they don't wish to do something like that.
Tim, there's one last question in here from Stephanie on the Q&A. I'm not sure if you mentioned it earlier, but are we allowed to charge an administration fee for PAP?
Unless the PAP specifically says you can't, I don't see a reason that you cannot. I'm not saying that you must do it. We did. We charged $5. That covered a small amount of our administration fees for putting it all together. But that charge was usually just once a year because you can do renewals and usually it's on a 12-month basis that a manufacturer will then ask you to reapply after 12 months. Unless there's something specific within that PAP that says you may not charge, I think charging a very nominal fee is fair. As most of you know, I'm someone who really believes that if something is free, it has no value. And so if we even do a $5 fee that someone's going to get a $500 drug for every month for a year, that's pretty minimal, I think. And it adds value to it in their eyes as well.
Great. Well, thank you, Tim, and thank you everyone who participated. I think we're right at time, but I did want to put in a plug. One last thing in terms of housekeeping and some technical assistance. I noticed we have some chat issues, so we'll work on getting that chat feature corrected for our next meeting. And also, I've been getting emails. That's kind of why I was off camera during the session. I was getting emails from folks having trouble registering or just logging in. So make sure you all read the invitation because I did have it that the password was changed from our last meeting. So all that stuff is in the invitation, but we'll make sure we send out reminders so that you can see the updated password that will remain the same for the remainder of our few months left in our term here. So it is Pharmacy 2021. So that's going to be the password moving forward, but you'll see that in future invitations.